A toddler is playing, having a perfectly normal day. Then suddenly, they hit someone. Maybe it's another child. Maybe it's a sibling. Maybe it's you. And for many parents, the first thought is always the same. Why would they do that? Were they angry? Being mean? Trying to get attention? The surprising truth is that toddlers usually aren't hitting for the reasons adults think. In fact, many toddlers hit long before they fully understand what hitting even means. So what's really going on inside a toddler's brain when they lash out? And why is this behavior so common in children who are otherwise loving, happy, and affectionate? To answer that, we first need to understand something important. Toddlers don't think like adults. Toddlers don't hit because they're tiny adults making bad decisions. They hit because they're tiny humans with brains that are still under construction. As adults, we can feel angry, frustrated, or upset, and usually stop ourselves from acting on every impulse. A toddler often can't. That's because the part of the brain responsible for self-control, planning, and decision-making is one of the last parts to fully develop. Think of it like a car. Adults have an engine and brakes. Toddlers have a powerful engine, but the brakes are still being installed. So when a strong emotion shows up, it can race through their brain before self-control has a chance to catch up. That's why a toddler might know hitting is wrong, and then hit someone anyway 5 minutes later. They aren't necessarily forgetting the rule. Their brain is struggling to apply it in the moment. For a toddler, knowing something and controlling an impulse are often two very different things. Imagine feeling frustrated, angry, overwhelmed, excited, or disappointed, but not having the words to explain any of it. That's what life is often like for a toddler. Adults can usually say, "I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I don't like that." A toddler often can't. So instead of communicating with words, they communicate with actions. Sometimes that action is crying. Sometimes it's throwing. Sometimes it's biting. And sometimes it's hitting. In many cases, hitting isn't planned aggression. It's a fast, emotional reaction from a child who doesn't yet have the language skills to explain what's happening inside their head. For some toddlers, a hit can actually mean, "I'm frustrated. Pay attention to me. I want that toy. Stop doing that." Or simply, "I don't know what I'm feeling right now." The behavior isn't always the message. Sometimes it's the child's attempt to send one. Here's where things get tricky. When a toddler hits someone, something usually happens immediately. The other child gives up the toy. The parent rushes over. Everyone suddenly pays attention. And to a toddler's brain, that can feel like success. Not because they're trying to manipulate anyone, but because their brain is learning. When I do this, something happens. Toddlers learn through cause and effect. It's how they learn language. It's how they learn to walk. And it's how they learn behavior. If hitting gets a result, even accidentally, the brain takes notes. Imagine a tiny scientist running experiments all day. Push button, see what happens. Throw food, see what happens. Hit someone, see what happens. To a toddler brain, "I got the toy" can accidentally become "hitting works." And that's why stopping toddler hitting isn't just about punishment. It's about teaching a better way to get the same result. Because if words work, sharing works, waiting works, asking for help works, the brain slowly stops needing the hitting shortcut. This is where a lot of parents get stuck. A toddler hits, the adult gets angry, the toddler gets punished. Problem solved, right? Not exactly. Remember, the problem usually isn't that the toddler doesn't know the rule. Most toddlers already know hitting is wrong. The problem is what happens in the moment. When big emotions show up, the thinking part of the brain gets pushed aside. It's a little like expecting someone to solve a math problem while riding a roller coaster. The information is there, but accessing it is a lot harder. That's why punishment often misses the real problem. Punishment focuses on what happened after the hit, but the struggle started before the hit. It started when the emotion became too big. The goal isn't just teaching, "Don't hit." The goal is teaching, "Here's what to do instead." Because eventually, the toddler won't always have a parent standing next to them. They'll need skills, not just rules. The kids who learn to name feelings, ask for help, take turns, and calm themselves down are building tools they'll use for the rest of their lives. And that's what we're really teaching. Not just how to stop hitting, but how to handle big emotions without hurting someone. Not all toddlers hit the same amount. Some rarely hit at all. Others seem to use it every day. So what's the difference? Part of it comes down to temperament. Some children are naturally more intense. They feel excitement bigger, frustration bigger, anger bigger. Everything hits harder. Other children are naturally more easygoing. The same situation creates a much smaller emotional reaction. Environment matters too. A toddler who sees hitting from siblings, friends, daycare, television, or adults is more likely to experiment with it. Not because they're bad, because they're learning. Toddlers are copy machines. If they see a behavior, they'll often try it themselves. Sleep can matter. Hunger can matter. Big life changes can matter. A toddler who just got a new sibling, started daycare, moved houses, or is going through a stressful period may hit more than usual. Sometimes hitting isn't a personality trait at all. It's a sign that something feels overwhelming. And that's why understanding the reason behind the behavior matters more than simply reacting to the behavior itself. So what should parents do when a toddler hits? First, stay calm. Easier said than done, but remember, your child is borrowing your nervous system. If you explode, the situation usually gets worse. Next, stop the behavior immediately. Calm doesn't mean permissive. You can be calm and firm at the same time. A simple no hitting is often enough. Then, focus on what the child should do instead. Use words, ask for help, take turns, show them the alternative, because skills have to be practiced, not just explained. And don't expect instant results. Remember the tiny scientists from earlier? They're still running experiments. Sometimes they'll forget. Sometimes they'll mess up. Sometimes they'll need hundreds of repetitions. That's normal. Over time, the brain keeps building. The emotional storms become smaller. The breaks become stronger. And most children naturally grow out of hitting. But there are times when extra help may be useful. If a child is getting older and the hitting isn't improving, if communication is extremely delayed, or if aggressive behavior is becoming more intense instead of less, it may be worth speaking with a pediatrician. Not because something is necessarily wrong, but because support works best when it starts early. The good news? For most toddlers, hitting is just one small chapter of learning how to be human. So why do toddlers hit? The answer is, usually not because they're mean, usually not because they're bad, and usually not because they're trying to hurt people. Most of the time, hitting is a message coming from a brain that is still under construction. Sometimes that message is, I'm frustrated. Sometimes it's, I don't know how to ask. Sometimes it's, I'm overwhelmed. Sometimes it's, I saw someone else do it. And sometimes it's simply, something happened, and my brain is still figuring out what works. That's why looking only at the hit can be misleading. The hit is often the final domino. The real story usually started much earlier, with emotions, stress, communication struggles, or skills that haven't fully developed yet. The good news? Brains change, skills grow, new pathways form. And with time, practice, guidance, and support, most toddlers learn better ways to express what they're feeling. So the next time you see a toddler hit, try asking a different question. Not, what's wrong with this child? But, what is this child trying to tell us? Because when we understand the message, we can finally teach the skill. And that's the real reason understanding toddler behavior matters. And that's a fact.